Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 37 of Quattroporte, the review series for Gran Turismo's selection of sports saloons or sports sedans and of course super saloons. Four-door vehicles of, at least to some degree, a performance nature. And in this particular pick we are featuring certainly a great car in, I would say, more the sports saloon rather than super saloon category. Japan doesn't really make many super saloons. There are some, but not many. They tend to go more for more attainable, more practical sports sedans. And this is the birth of an icon. A car which would come to be widely loved is an understatement, and extremely respected primarily for rallying, but also on the road. And it's the Subaru Impreza, the original 1994 shape. The car which is one of the relatively few, apart from Porsche, to use a boxer engine, which essentially means that it is a flat engine, meaning that the pistons are facing away from each other, instead of being in line, pointing essentially upwards. That engine has some distinct advantages, such as smoothness. It's a much smoother engine. It also means that height-wise it's much more compact. It is wider though, but primarily that height allows the car to have a much lower centre of gravity because of how low down in the body and in the chassis that engine can sit. Now with the Impreza on the game, you can't necessarily feel that as a distinct advantage, but there are hints of it there. You can kind of feel it to some degree. It's certainly a very drivable car, a very fun car, a very forgiving car, and it always has been. So why buy this version? Historically speaking, it's significant because it's the first one, but is it actually any better than, say, the newer versions? Is it better than, for instance, the Evo? Well, older Japanese cars typically have one very distinct advantage, and it's an advantage which, to some degree or less, they've kind of given up in more recent years. Both the Evo and the Impreza have become heavier. Japanese cars used to be known for being so lightweight, because they were so much simpler. They did without all the frills of German or English or French sports saloons in favour of simplicity. Just get you from A to B and then turn that into a performance car. That was essentially the ethos behind them. And that makes them brilliant. Or it's one of the things that makes them brilliant. But the newer models kind of gave that up. This original Impreza still has that. I mean, obviously, it's the original. It only weighs 1,030 kilos, and that means that it is quite literally lighter than most of the GT class race cars in the game. That's impressive for a four-door family car, and it's not a particularly small car either. It's not huge, of course, but it's a normal size sedan. So what do you get in terms of spec? Well, the Imprezas, and to some degree the Evos as well, don't really vary that much. The power tends to sit between a very similar level regardless of the age of the car, and that's a shame because some do definitely deserve more power than others, and there are some, such as the 22B, which are allowed more, but in general there should definitely be more of a variation between them. They tend to mostly sit between, say, 530 and 570 horsepower. This particular Impreza has 544 horsepower, 380 foot-pounds of torque, and due to the fact that it weighs not much more than a tonne, it does put out a really decent 528 horsepower per tonne. The PP is, I would say, pretty well placed, 553, it's not overly high. I wouldn't necessarily recommend racing it at that level, but it's certainly not too high. As far as the price, well, it's a Japanese performance car, so value for money is pretty much guaranteed. 28 grand is certainly very reasonable for such a competitive car. Now, another thing that I would say is great about the Impreza, and this is actually, I would say, more the case in the older models than in the latest models, is that they have a good mix of steering, handling, and drivability. Now, those three separate things are something which I personally like to refer to as different things. I don't know if I'm the only person to refer to them this way, but I like to think of steering, handling and drivability as three completely different categories within the overall category that most people think of as handling as a broad term. And the reason why I think of those as three distinct things are, if you think about it, steering is how well a car can turn. But being able to turn well is not a guarantee of good handling. A smart car, for instance, has a super short wheelbase and an amazing turning circle, but tune that thing up to 300 or 400 horsepower and it's not going to have good handling. Then you have drivability, and I would say that drivability is how forgiving the car is, how fun it is, and how it feels as an overall package. Does the car feel like it works well with what it's given? And one of the best things about the Impreza overall, and I would actually say this is one way in which the Impreza is actually possibly slightly better than the Evo in this regard, is that overall package. It has the turn-in that you need, enough grip, the handling is good, it handles itself and its weight and its size very well, and the drivability is good. It's very forgiving and very fun. So it has a great mix of all those things, which is one of the reasons why it became such a great rally car. The Evo, as much as I love it, and I think I may actually prefer the Evo to the Impreza, the Evo though is more of a professional machine. It's sharper, it has more of an edge to it, it's less forgiving, it requires you to do more of the work. The Impreza is a perfect beginner's car. Extremely forgiving handling, very low weight, so the chuckability is fantastic. You can literally throw it into corners without really having to worry too much. And the price is low. In a straight line, of course, it's not the strongest, nowhere near as strong as, say, an M5 or a Mercedes AMG, but as a circuit racer, it's a great car. So, that's it overall for this particular episode. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.